Hi, welcome to Family Law Fridays presented by Florida Women's Law Group. My name is Betsy Corbett. I'm in the marketing department and I'll be your host for today. Family Law Friday is designed to be a resource for women with a family law issue. Today we will be discussing time sharing during the holidays. Before we get started, I'd like to give you a little information about our host, Heather Quick. Heather is the founder and owner of Florida Women's Law Group, serving North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on the law so that they can find the strength to endure the process and come out better financially and emotionally. She's been a licensed Florida attorney for over 20 years, with most of her practice being in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick to Family Law Friday.
And here in Northeast Florida, school's still in at the moment, but many of us have had children that have had quarantine throughout this process because of potential exposure to other kids. There's a lot of speculation in the media as to maybe the schools will close down earlier, the break will be longer. I don't know at this point. What I do know is that kids will be home for like 5 days for Thanksgiving. Maybe some districts have 6. Either way, there's going to be that break. And hopefully that you and your spouse have worked through that as to who's going to have, the child where and how they're going to travel and how you're going to exchange the children. Because when those are disagreements during holiday time, it's just a heightened disagreement and can be very frustrating, difficult because you're traveling and emotions tend to be a little heightened. But as we get through Thanksgiving, because you may have already figured all that out, and we go ahead and move forward and look to the Christmas holiday school break. So if you have a traditional parenting plan that is basically your standard form that the majority of people have, it will say from the day school lets out to Christmas morning, on odd years, on even years, Christmas morning beyond till the day the school returns. Now that sometimes it's either Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. That's just your standard boilerplate parenting plan for the Christmas school holiday. So when you go beyond that, and maybe you have more specifics, because some, and I've had many clients that, really they're like, no, I never want to not see my child on Christmas Day. And so they've come up with an agreement that it's midday. And hopefully that's been working because sometimes that does prevent travel or makes it a little more difficult, but it is what it is. And hopefully if you agree to something very specific, that is continuing to work for you. There is very limited time at this point in time when we're looking at, say, the Christmas holidays, if you're wanting to change it. But if so, we need to deal with it right now. But that's the first thing to look at is, well, what is on schedule for this year based on whether we're an odd or even or however we have come up with it. Did either one of you voluntarily change something last year? So is that going to affect you this year? I don't know. You got to look at that because I've had many cases where, you don't hear it till say, 2 weeks before Christmas, and your ex is like, oh no, we swapped last year, so I just figured we'd swap again this year. Well, don't assume that. And even if you think that, that is really important that the two of you have a conversation. And so that's one of the number one things you have to do with time sharing and holidays is communicate. Talk, preferably in writing if there's going to be any changes so that it's clear. More often than not, you can have a conversation with another human being and they both leave with 2 different recollections of what happened. So that is very important. If you want to change what you believe you two are doing this year, you got to do it now. And through communication, because hopefully that is something you and your ex can work out and can allow for flexibility with each other. I know it's not always possible. And, I'm, ever optimistic for all our clients that the animosity or the difficulty with schedule changing decreases over time. But I know that that's not always true. So I am sympathetic to that. And it's difficult. I know, because I've heard it so many times. Well, why bother asking? Because this is going to be his response. I will tell you why, because when we go to court, because if you two can't agree on something, and it could be this holiday, it could be something else, it could be something a little bit further in the future, but the judge is going to ask you if you asked. They always will. They always will. Even if I don't ask you, or the other side, somebody's going to ask you, and then the court looks at you maybe in a bad light. Like, why don't you just try to have a conversation? Now, this is, an impartial judge who doesn't know your situation. They don't know how it feels when you're trying to communicate with your ex. They don't understand all of the history and the difficulties that come with it. And I just tell you, they will ask if you've tried to reach out. So that's the first one. Attempt at communication. Attempt at calm, civil, non-emotional communication about, are you open to some flexibility? Can we change it? That is definitely my first recommendation, is really try to communicate. I know with a lot of our clients, they will reach out to us and we'll be like, well, this is how I would say it. And they're like, okay, I'm writing that down. And that can be helpful. And, we do that all the time for our clients while we're going through this. And we try to give them language to write the email that, there's such a big difference, in how you ask so often versus, versus saying, well, you've never agreed to change and you always yell at me when I ask. However, how about this year? Kind of keep that other part out. Or maybe with your assumptions of what they're going to say. And I may sound like common sense, but when you're in it, it's hard. And I know that. I know it's just like, you just want to sometimes get that jab. But if you're the one who wants something, catch more flies with honey, right? So that is the first thing. Communication, clear communication about, one, maybe even just confirming the plan, because maybe your spouse lives further away and there's going to be a long drive, or there could be a flight. Airlines are still open. And, if you are going to be flying, or you believe they're going to be flying, that's really important. You got to narrow that down, and you need answers if you're the one, taking them to the airport. So it's really important to begin that communication early, because one, it gives you more time to resolve it. Or two, if you're going to need relief from the courts or with your attorneys, you got to give them some time, because the courts, really shut down as it approaches the holiday. So, and they are so full right now anyway, we got to get this stuff handled the best we can. And if, and help you determine, hey, what are my options? So communication in early with your ex. Try to either, if you're going to stick with the plan, try to confirm some details. Are you still going to pick up at this time? Do you want to alter that at all? Ideally, that you're offering, like, hey, where's some flexibility? Are you wanting them earlier, later? What works for you? Because then maybe they'll give you that same courtesy. And also what works best for the kids. And that so depends on their ages and how they're affected by the change at the holidays. So those are just some things to think about. Many times that school calendar, it changes so often depending on where Christmas falls. So you may have a situation where there's a little more time on the front end or more time on the back end. I feel like it alternates every year. So those are good conversations to have. You may have to work that full week before Christmas. And it's been such a tough year with these kids in and out of school. Maybe you're asking for a little help, or maybe your spouse is, and saying, hey, listen, like, I don't know what to do with the kids for this week. But you guys need to begin that conversation so that it's not that last minute and then, it falls on you as the mom. The dad's like, hey, I'm not picking them up till Christmas Eve, but you anticipated something different. And now you're going to be scrambling to figure out what your children are going to do if you have to work or you have a plan. So, the earlier you can communicate and begin to think about those plans, the better. And, flexibility. And that is a difficult thing so often during the holidays, because we have our traditions and you have, your mindset on what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And there's not a ton of flexibility on when they're in and out of school. And so, there's a lot of things that come into play, but I would encourage you to be open-minded and, to having some flexibility. I know sometimes you are in a relationship and things are difficult and, you know how it's gone always down in the past. And so it's hard to be open-minded to changing or maybe being a little more flexible because your spouse has never been flexible with you. I just ask you to keep an open mind. And I'm looking at it out of really two angles that will benefit you in the end. One, just for the sake of your children, the less you can argue with your ex, the better. They feel it, they know it, they sense it. It's better. It's hard. None of this is easy, but the more flexibility, the more gracious you can be, the better it is for your children. And then two, at the end of the day, how you're going to be perceived in court. If it gets to that level, or if we're just trying to negotiate, if you enter any issue where you're trying to change or where there's the exchange of children and you're wanting it to go smoother, or maybe you want a little more time, the better you enter that and more open-minded, the better you're going to be perceived by the court and the more reasonable and rational you're going to look. That's the thing with this so often. We're looking at text messages or emails, voicemails, somewhat out of context because there's not the emotionality and it's so much longer, so much time has passed since that happened. So those are the kind of things that really make a difference when we're looking at time sharing over the holidays. And I'll be very interested. I have a feeling we will hear from so many of you on air travel because, many parents still do live apart and or your family, and maybe you're thinking, hey, we got to go see them now. That brings up a lot more issues and potentially for parents, and they're thinking, well, I don't want my child flying. I'm worried about Corona. What do I do? I don't have a straight answer for you. I wish I did, but what I do know is you got to bring it up early. And if your ex has bought a plane ticket and intends to put your child on a plane and they're going somewhere, you're going to have to deal with it. And you're going to have to really gather some evidence that supports your position if you don't think that is safe. What does that mean? If your child is at a certain type of risk, you got to talk to your pediatrician, and you really need to understand or have the pediatrician explain to you what's in the child's best interest, and try to get your ex to understand and hear that. So those are things that need to, again, happen now. I know many times you'll feel your spouse won't communicate with you, and but you have a feeling like, hey, their whole family, is in Virginia. I don't think they're driving. I think they're flying, but he won't give me that information. I think he's just going to pick them up and then they're going to go fly, and he doesn't want to tell me any of that. You just try to ask the questions, document those conversations, and you do have a right to know what's going to happen over that time sharing. Do you have a right to say no, he can't fly? Only if it's really based on some medical evidence at this point. Things are changing every day. And I don't know what your particular physician would say, what they would recommend in regards to your child. And But you do, and that's how you figure this out. And that's how you help your spouse understand this is the risks. And they're recommending either if you do it, these are the safety precautions or not. So I can't tell you if it's right or wrong, because every family is going to be different. And I do think this year is a little different. I don't know if there's going to be big family gatherings, and to what extent. And, or are they going to go out? There aren't going to be probably as many crowds. And, when we're here in Florida, we have, yes, certain rules, regulations, but it really varies from even within the state of Florida up and down the coast. And I know it varies throughout the country in different states. So therefore, if you're traveling to a different state, there may be more restrictions there meant to protect individuals from gathering. But that's information you need to know, or ask your spouse to share with you, because ideally the two of you are going to try to come to an agreement. If you have shared parental responsibility, that includes healthcare, and I would say COVID falls under that if your child has certain risks. It kind of went off a little bit sideways. However, right now, it seems to come up in every conversation. And, our children are going to be out of school at least 2 weeks, hopefully not more than that, and then go back. But during that time, I know many parents who where the kids are going to be the other side and they don't want to work, they got to get caught up. And, they hope they don't extend the break, because it puts such a burden on working parents. And even if you're trying to work from home and have them at home, I know it's a lot. And if it's even more extended over the break, hopefully you and your spouse your ex have really been able to work through that. If you're in the middle of the divorce, you definitely got to talk about it, especially if you're not living in the same house, or even if you are, how you're handling this so that your children don't get confused that this divorce is not happening. Those are tricky issues, and you can still divide the time and maybe divide some times with family that works for you guys, because every situation, like I said, is different. And the stress of the holidays is real. We all feel it. And that's not even negative stress. It's good stress. It's just, there's a lot to do. And usually it falls on us women. I mean, it does. We're the ones. And maybe we bring it on ourselves because we want it to be the way we want it to be, but that's just the way it is. If we're going to have family over, and then there's presents and, Christmas cards, and, whether we're having a Christmas Eve dinner, Christmas Day dinner, however you're celebrating Hanukkah, and, whose house are you having dinner at, and who's doing what, and how are we going to divide the families? There are a lot of decisions, and there's a lot of things that when you value and have really set a priority on these traditions, it can be a little harder because we kind of put it on ourselves, but then we know at the end of the day it's worth it, or we tell ourselves that for our kids, and that we carry on our certain traditions. But it does bring stress to every one of us. And, it's just taking deep breaths and embracing that. And when there's that added level of, okay, where are the kids going to be during when? That's why the importance of that communication early is so helpful. And maybe now, and there are some parenting plans and divorces that you would think it would be clear, but it's not. Certainly ask your attorney, say, can you just clarify, this seems a little strange in the wording, and I just need clarification before I communicate with my ex. I think that's a really smart move and never a bad decision, because is plain English as maybe we try or don't try to write these parenting plans. Sometimes when you're in it and you're reading that, you're like, this doesn't make any sense to me. How should I best interpret this? Then, I would definitely call your attorney and get some clarification on that. And we do that all the time during consults. And we try to help maneuver, or we'll just say, hey, this was written really badly, so we got to do our best to interpret it. And let's talk about, what they think it's supposed to say, and how we're going to manage with this. As the holidays near, and as we get ready for, all of the joy, but a lot of families are going to have a lot of sadness this year as the holidays. And everyone's going to have a level of stress, level of good and bad stress, and things may be different. You may not be gathering with everybody this year. And we're certainly here for you at Florida Women's Law Group. When I started this firm, it was to help women just like you, because we all struggle through everything all the time. And, we have that gift to be able to help women who are in a divorce and have issues with family law, but yet they're the same issues we've all dealt with. It just can sometimes be heightened because you've been through a divorce and what you're doing now. And we just want you to know we're here for you. We know it's difficult and can be stressful. And if you or somebody is concerned about the holidays and not sure how that time sharing is going to work, you please give us a call, reach out to us, and we'll be here for you. And Betsy will give you some more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, and to everyone that was able to listen today. We're here for you whether you have a question on visitation or any other legal issue. Please give us a call at 904-241-0012. Thank you for joining us and have a happy holiday.